This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of DocNJock, a special episode. I'm down here in Florida having a good old time, absorbing as much vitamin D as possible. I did have a couple cocktails before recording, but not too many, because I wanted to have a conversation with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Guys, I got to admit, you all know my loyalty to Michigan, but I was telling Adam, my ass might stay down here and become Florida man. No doubt about it. The sun is amazing, 65 and sunny. Getting around Disney has been amazing with the kids, but now I had to get away. Too much time with the kids will make anybody crazy. So this hour, this opportunity to potentially chat a little bit with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski, is going to be fun. Maybe a little shorter episode so that I can get out of here and get back to the festivities. Because I wish you a great vacation as well. It's much needed. Obviously, Michigan, I hear, is in the 30s. Sunny weather and vitamin D does a body good. I feel energized. I'm reading all the stuff people are talking about. On Tuesday morning, or on Wednesday, excuse me, I posted an article. I had Vito look into it and riled it up. So we'll talk about it as well regarding J.J. McCarthy and what Adam's thoughts are regarding what his future in the NFL looks like. Because we're here. It's draft season, and the Detroit Lions are now looking to do a lot of good things in regards to this draft. And I feel confident. I feel like I know a lot of people have messaged, and I get the tone. Brad Holmes did wonders with his presser, because half of the messages to all my draft posts are like, I trust Brad, it's all good, and I'm just going to sit on it. So it's interesting in regards to how people are kind of experiencing it. I think people are really confident heading into this offseason that Brad Holmes, whatever he does, if he takes a quarterback in the first round, if he trades up, down, it feels like people are just like me on this trip. They're just laying out and going, you know what? I'm not going to worry about people's opinions about the draft. Brad Holmes got this, buddy. And I think people are heading into this offseason more confident than they ever have that the Lions are headed in the right direction.
You heard it here first. Doc is down in Florida getting all of the vitamin D. He loves the vitamin D. Just taking D to the face right now as we speak. A couple cocktails in him and a couple of cocks in him possibly because he loves the D. No, but I think you're right. I think after this last draft, right? This last draft, it was highly criticized. Brad Holmes' draft taking a running back as high as he did, neglecting a interior defensive lineman like Jalen Carter, going and then taking a tight end, taking a linebacker as high as he did, and then taking a safety and Brian Branch when he did, and then moving around in the third round, taking a quarterback. This draft that he just had, highly criticized, highly scrutinized. And you got to see the fruits of that labor. This past postseason, you got to see these rookies come in and make an immediate impact. And I think because of that, you've got a lot of people around town. You've got a lot of media personnel. You've got a lot of people nationally talking about, in Brad Holmes we trust. Whatever Brad Holmes wants to do in the draft, we're going to go along with it because he has proved doubters wrong. And he took receipts. And he laid them out, and he aired his grievances at his final press conference of the season. And look, to Brad Holmes' credit, he's done a remarkable job in the draft. Done a fantastic job in the draft. And because of that, I'm willing to pause some of my criticism when the draft rolls around. All that being said, I'm not necessarily subscribing to the in Brad Holmes we trust. I'm not giving him carte blanche to just go ahead and do whatever he wants to do when it comes to these offseason moves. Because if you look at what he's done in free agency, it really hasn't worked out all that great. He hasn't made any big splash moves in free agency. He hasn't done anything that's really helped transform and make this a transformative team with his moves in free agency. So I need to see Brad Holmes go out and do something with some of this cap space that they have. They just let Tracy Walker go to free up some cap space. I need you to turn around and utilize that cap space and go get me a guy. Get me a guy along the defensive end, or the defensive line, whether it be a defensive end or whether it be a defensive tackle, somebody to cause a ruckus up front, or go get me a cornerback. Get me a starting cornerback, because look, Cam Sutton is not that guy. Cam Sutton is an okay 2, but it is obvious he is not a 1. So you need to address a few holes along this defense that could really make this team a legit Super Bowl contender. No longer are we talking about playoffs. We are now talking about Super Bowls. And this team is now playing with the big dogs. You have a seat at the big dog table. Your competition is no longer Green Bay. Your competition is no longer the Chicago Bears. Your competition is no longer the Minnesota Vikings. Your competition is now the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the San Francisco 49ers. That is your competition. You are in the likes with the Buffaloes, with the Philadelphia Eagles. That is now who you are in competition with. I need Brad Holmes to go out and make a move in free agency. Yes, I love his draft analysis. And yes, I will give him kudos for everything that he has been able to do in the draft, but I still do not trust this man when it comes to free agency, because I haven't seen him make a transformative move. So while I will sit on the sidelines and I will watch his drafts with a lot of, I guess, scrutiny, and we'll watch them with an inquisitive eye, because it'll be interesting to see what he does. Brad Holmes has shown you, when it comes to the draft, if he likes a player and he trusts his grade on a player, he's got no problem moving up for them. He's got no problem moving back. He's got no problem moving around and taking the guys that he likes where he likes them. And you know what? I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. But when it comes to free agency, I need to see this man make a move that is going to help catapult this team into that legitimate Super Bowl competition, that legitimate Super Bowl conversation. This team was so close, and yet it feels like they are still so far away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So I want to see a move made in free agency where he's going to go out and he's going to pony up some dollar bills to get a guy who's going to come in here and make an immediate impact. Am I wrong for demanding him make some moves with free agency, go out and spend some of this cash that he has? I think we are all on board with what he does in the draft, because he's done an incredible job with his drafts. He's got so many guys from all of his drafts still on this roster. You don't see that often. It's just the free agency leaves me always wanting just a little bit more. Honestly, Alex Anzalone, and he's been great. He's been probably your best free agency move that you have made. And I don't know if that's transformative enough. It's not for me. Is that enough of a transformative free agency move for you, or do you need to see a little bit more out of this year's free agency period?
See, I think what's interesting is that Brad Holmes kind of said, don't be shocked if we don't make a lot of free agency moves, because it is more of a risk. I think he loves the draft and develop model. I know people are talking about Bosa. They talk about Smith. They talk about the Minnesota edge rusher, the player that people love, that is a veteran. But I think that a lot of these positions, cornerback, interior, edge, you can find in the draft, and you can still roll with the guys that you have. So free agency, to me, I think is shoring up more depth than, to me, it would be to find a key contributor. Does that make sense? I feel like a lot of these positions in our exploration in regards to these positions, it kind of makes more sense that, you know what? Why spend $10 million on a guy that you're not exactly sure of and getting to a bidding war when you can get somebody that you've scouted intently that you can kind of mold? Let's just say, for example, it's Joey Bosa. Now, he's a professional. He's going to come in and handle things. But is he going to have the same dedication to the cause that maybe a James Houston will, based on the draft and development? Does that make sense? It's kind of like trust your own. Trust in the model where you have these young guys that buy into the system that haven't been hardened yet. I feel like the draft and develop model is a little bit better in regards to just giving a guy a bunch of money. And it's kind of showed that guys that are hungry, that want to earn those big contracts, play a little harder. And I think that gets you to where you need to go. Now, is there a different strategy you can deploy? Absolutely. But I do think that a lot of these free agent moves, I think are going to be tier 2. I don't know. I'm shocked. Me and you, we love to spend Brad Holmes' money. We love to spend the Lions. Go out and get Jalen Johnson from the Bears. Go out and get Joey Bosa. Go out and get all these free agent dudes that are going to cost $15 million plus. But cuz you're seeing it now, they're starting to trim salary to keep their own guys. And one of the guys that we're going to talk about later on, and 2 guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff, they're going to start commanding big money. So the free agent dollars, I think, are going to go to tier 2 guys that shore up positions, that can help out a little bit and do things. And there are guys out there in the tier 2 class that you can get. You're starting to read now perfect fits for the Lions in regards to various positions. And I just think that I'm not like, and I actually too, when someone keeps telling you, these big name guys, we don't target that much, it kind of makes you not want them anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, if Brad Holmes doesn't value it as much, and you see the success that they've had kind of taking these gritty guys, I understand. We don't want the fat and sassy guys, because if I'm making $10 million and Dan Campbell's ripping into me, am I really going to fight for it? I'm going to be like, yeah, I get what he's saying. And, I got my cash. It's still going to be there. What the Lions are these hungry guys that still want to get the contract, so that when the coach is yelling and screaming, it actually makes it have impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get that, right? And look, I subscribe to the draft your own, build your team through the draft, re-sign your own guys. I get it. But you and I both know, specifically in a position like corner, if you're drafting a guy, he's not going to make an impact next year.
Yes,
he'll make an impact. Yes. It'll usually be a year or 2 later. He's not making an immediate impact. And I think right now, with where this team is at, with them being on the precipice of being in a Super Bowl, I think at a certain point, you kind of have to pony up some money. You got to be able to go out and get some guys. And specifically, we talked about it all last season. And they were able to honestly, they were able to make chicken salad out of chicken shit with their defensive front, right? That defensive front, not great. Pretty banged up most of the year, right? Aleem McNeil is a rock star. You've got Aiden Hutchinson. He's a rock star. And then after that defensive front is just kind of some guys. And a lot of those guys, like a Josh Pascal, I think he will be good, but he was banged up most of the year. You don't really have James Houston. This is another guy who they were really counting on. Banged up most of the year. Didn't even get back on the field after they activated him for the playoffs. You need other guys. You need depth along that defensive front, whether it's a defensive tackle or whether it's a defensive edge. You need a guy up front to help pair with Aiden Hutchinson, with Aleem McNeil. If Josh Pascal is going to be that guy, great. But you know what else would look really good alongside Josh Pascal? I don't know, a Danielle Hunter, a Zadarius Smith, a Josh Allen. You can add these guys who can get to the quarterback and cause havoc, or guys who can help clog up parts of the middle and make things really, really difficult on the other team's offensive front. And that's what I need to see. That's what I want to see. There are going to be a litany of cornerbacks that are going to be available. Guys who can step in and alleviate some of that pressure from a guy like Cam Sutton, who we've been highly critical of. I specifically have been highly critical of. I've been incredibly critical of Cam Sutton because throughout the end of the season, I've done nothing but want to pull my hair out or take my dick and put it in a door and just slam it shut. And there are going to be guys out there that you can get that can really help offset what he does well and help put him into a better position. A guy like a Kendall Fuller, Stephon Gilmore. It's a little bit of an older veteran that you could go out and get. There are cornerbacks out there that you can add to this team that can step in and make an immediate impact and help alleviate some of that pressure to make Sutton better. And I don't know if going through the draft, you get that immediate impact. You get that automatic boost because cornerback's a developmental skill. Unless you're Sauce Gardner, which was absolutely unreal to watch him come into the league and be able to not be surprised, not be a step behind, to basically since day one step in and be going at game speed with these other guys has been incredible to watch. There's not a lot of guys like that in college that immediately break into the league and take off. You could look at a guy who is as sure of a prospect as Jeff Okudah. Jeff Okudah was written in as a top 3 prospect. He was a guy who a year prior was supposed to possibly go number 1 overall. He never took off here in Detroit. Never happened. He got traded to Atlanta. Never really happened there either. At this point in his career, he's looking like he's a depth cornerback on an average team. So those positions take time to develop. And sometimes you've seen him with Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson's a dog. We both agree. The guy is a dog. He is still developing. This is a guy who was in the conversation to go number 1 overall. This was a guy who was taken at the very top of the draft, and he's still developing. He's still working on developing swim moves, developing on ways to get around different offensive tackles. You've seen a bit of a progression from year 1 to year 2. We're at that point where I need what Aiden Hutchinson's bringing in year 3. I need that opposite of him. I need somebody else to help take that step with him. 1, to make him look like a better player, but 2, to help that back end of that defense look better and really help strengthen what is a weak point on this team. So I want them to use some money in free agency, go get a couple of guys. I don't need you to spend $1 billion on these guys, right? Because, again, I subscribe to what you want to do. I get it. I think taking guys in the draft and insulating your team with your own draft picks, it helps you do a couple of things. It helps you keep your cap in check and allows you to have more money so you can go do things with free agency. It allows you to get these guys in, teach them your way, develop them the way you want them to develop, and it allows you the ability to sign them for cheap and have them for 4 to 5 years, and that's a great thing. It's awesome. When you see a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown take off, and we're going to talk about having to pay that guy, when you see a guy like that take off, it's great, because then we can have this conversation about how much is he worth to this team. How much should you re-sign him? Is he a sign at all costs kind of guy? We can have that conversation, and those are fun to do because he's been an absolute dog since he's entered the league. But by doing that, you allow yourself on the front end to have some wiggle room, to be able to go out and get an impactful guy. You really only need 1, maybe 2 impactful guys. And I don't necessarily, like you said, I would love a tier 1 guy, all right? But I kind of believe he's going to do what you're saying. It will probably be a tier 2 guy. But I need that tier 2 guy to really take that next step up. I need him to come in, sign that contract, and I need him to take that next level, really get himself to that point where he's able to, whether it's a 1 or a 2 year deal, when he's able to hit free agency again, he can then get into that tier 1 and sign that deal. And that's what I want to see. That's what I want Brad Holmes to do. He's done a great job of uncovering diamonds in the rough. A guy like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, I need him to go do that with free agency. Find me a diamond in the rough, sign him for an affordable contract, and let him come in here and let him just basically shine. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And you look at it, I think what we're saying, we're in agreement. I think defense, because you want more of an immediate impact, you want more of a proven player. And I think that's fair, is that cornerback, interior of the defensive line, those are situations in which you want players that can come in and make an impact, especially since you're so close to being a Super Bowl team that can actually get there and win it. Real fast before we start looking at some players that got to get paid, Lions just recently tidied up some news. They have, it looks like, officially moved on from Dre Bly, which you understood the cornerback sucked, and it didn't look like it was going to be a situation that he could continue, especially when they added a defensive backs coach. And they've added Jim O'Neill as a defensive assistant, Deshae Townsend, the defensive backs coach, and Terrell Williams have now officially been added to the Lions coaching staff. Deshae Townsend is the defensive backs coach, passing game coordinator. Terrell Williams has been added as the run game coordinator and working with the defensive line. And that's a defensive position that's established. I know people get all confused when they see run game coordinator, but he's working with the defensive line over John Scott, and Jim O'Neill has been added as a defensive assistant. And it looks like John Fox, his contract has been expired, and they're not going to bring him back. So it looks like Dre Bly, John Scott taking the fall for some of the ills of the defense, which you have to. You have to kind of keep things fresh. Dan Campbell, I'm proud of him. When a unit struggles with consistency as they have with the defensive line and the cornerback spot, you recognize that, hey, sometimes, just like we just said, inexperience is not going to be a good thing, especially when you have a team that's right there on the cusp. And you saw it. The defensive line was inconsistent. You saw the cornerbacks just look a little bit lost at times. They didn't have enough talent, but at the same time, the Lions are looking for the coaching staff to coach up and get more out of guys than maybe the traditional coaches will. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the coaching staff as it moves forward. But I do think the Lions have to prioritize a couple guys that they're going to bring back. And so real fast before we get there, just a couple thoughts on the talk now around town. Do you think, and it's interesting because I woke up this morning and I knew we were going to talk, and I know people are talking about it, especially with Brad Holmes loving intangibles. I know Michigan fans saw it. J.J. McCarthy didn't look like the quarterback that could be traditionally the guy that zings it all over the place and has the rocket arm. But his intangibles are off the chart. Like, leader of men, had a heartbreak, had a situation in which something didn't go his way. He rallied the troops, brought everybody together, and won a national title. And it looks like, based on how you see quarterbacks in the league, there's an opportunity for him to be successful. And I think in the right spot, I got this nagging feeling, not that the Lions are going to take him, but whoever takes him. And look, we talk about it. We debate all players like a general manager would. And I know people got all mad like, oh my God, we have Jared Goff. Look, guys, I told you this before. I'll tell you again. I look at it like a general manager. I'm not loyal to any player. I would cut anybody in any moment, no matter how much they made, if it meant getting to the Super Bowl. I don't care. I'm not loyal. And Dan Campbell just said the same thing. We can't get loyal to players. We have to evaluate what we need, when we need it, and who's going to do what for us. That's how you got to look at it. That's how I've always looked at it. But I got a nagging feeling J.J. McCarthy, if he gets drafted like in the 6th round, if he falls, if he feels that sting, I feel like the guy's got something there, that he's got that little bit of a competitive edge that could make him a great quarterback. I don't know. Am I just getting all fan? Because obviously everybody wants Patrick Mahomes. We're always looking for the next guy. Could it be J.J. McCarthy, or are we just digging and fishing for a romantic sports story?
I mean, I think it would be a great story. And look, I think it's interesting that you're the one bringing this up because you are the Michigan State fan, not the Michigan fan. And J.J. McCarthy has caused you a bit of heartbreak a couple of times in the past. So it's an interesting conversation, especially being brought up by you. I think that if they didn't draft Hendon Hooker last year, I think it makes more sense. I think having Hendon Hooker on your roster, and there's a reason you took him where you took him, right? Because honestly, at that position, you could have used anything else that would make a dramatic impact on this team. You could have drafted any defensive end, any cornerback. You could have drafted another wide receiver. You could have did just about anything else, but you went with quarterback there because you believed in him. So I think with Hendon Hooker being on the roster, J.J. McCarthy just doesn't make sense here. I think it would be incredibly interesting. And look, I could see him being successful. I really don't know how successful he will be. Like I said, I could see it happening because, like you said, he falls. Right now he's projected, depending on which mock draft you look at, he's projected to possibly go in the top 10, which I think is absolutely crazy. I think it's crazy if he goes in the first round, especially with so many good quarterbacks that are entering into this draft. Look, I was very unimpressed with J.J. McCarthy. I think J.J. McCarthy, like you said, the intangibles are out of this world. That's what makes him special. I don't necessarily think his play on the field is anything great when I watch him, and especially last year. I know he won a national championship, so far be it for me to criticize, but when I watch him play, I feel like most of his passes are usually behind his receivers, and it's usually a step or two behind. So they got to either slow up or they got to put themselves in an awkward spot to try to catch the ball. I don't believe that translates to the next level. I don't believe his passing ability is there to help carry a pro football team. Now, again, the intangibles can. Leader of men, the guy who's able to rally the troops, all that stuff. Yes, absolutely. Loving football, all that stuff. But when it comes time to sit in a pocket with it collapsing around you and deliver a ball on time, on a spot, I just feel like he's going to be, at the pro level, I feel like he's going to be 3 steps behind his guy. I feel like he's going to be throwing behind, and I feel like he's going to be putting his wide receivers in bad spots. I don't see it translating. So I don't necessarily believe in him as a pro quarterback. I just don't see it working out, which is crazy because depending on who you read and who you believe, this guy looks like he's the second coming of Christ. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with J.J. McCarthy, but I do not believe he's a fit for the Detroit Lions. Not now, not in the future. And I really don't see him being a fit on any NFL team. Maybe a backup holding a clipboard. That's about it.
Yeah, no, I think he'll get drafted top 20. So it's not going to make sense to trade up for him. But if he's there at 29, it'll be real interesting because if you're about competition, I think J.J. and Hendon could push each other. They're basically the same kind of quarterback. I think if that would allow Hendon Hooker to evolve, I think developing guys in your system and then potentially moving on from them, getting them, because look, you could trade them for assets, or you could get a little bit more for them for a proven player if a team gets in a pinch. So there's a little interesting debate to have with J.J. McCarthy. I can't wait to see it. I want to see, does intangibles really take a guy like that to the next level in the NFL, because you're going to have to make throws. In the end, it's a passing league. And I do love his mobility. I love his intangibles, but I want to see, does he add the passing prowess to his game? And that'll be interesting. You know what adds passing prowess and availability? And that's a great offensive line. And for the Detroit Lions, it's weird because it kind of feels like most people are prioritizing Graham Glasgow over Jonah Jackson. If it were me, I'm looking at it in reverse. I think you prioritize and you move money around to keep Jonah Jackson and you move on from Graham Glasgow. No disrespect. But I think a guy entering the 32nd year, age 32, I know he played good, and I know offensive linemen can play later on, but I go with a younger guy, and I know Jonah Jackson had injury problems, but when he was there, when he was healthy, that offensive line looked great, and I feel like it might be a little bit more safe to secure the left side, Jared Goff's blind side, than it is the guard spot at the right side, because you got Penei Sewell that can mask some things. And I know that Colby Sorsdahl had some struggles, and a lot of the guys did. But if it were me, I would prioritize bringing back Jonah Jackson and letting Graham Glasgow go. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Because it kind of has a feel that the popular vote is with Graham Glasgow because he's more talkative and has more of a quirky personality that people like.
See, I'm completely opposite of you. It's Graham Glasgow, and it's for none of those reasons you just named. I like Graham Glasgow because he had the ability to stay healthy a little bit longer. Now, I agree with you. When Jonah Jackson was in, he's great, right? Like, he is awesome. And that offensive line is better with him in there. But Graham Glasgow was able to stay healthy. He's going to be cheaper, and he's a guy who's a little bit more versatile. He's a guy that if Frank Ragnow is banged up or beat up, and you've seen how beat up Frank Ragnow is. He's basically out there running around like a freaking machine, like a robot with a wooden leg. He is able to slide over and play center if Frank goes down. So I like the versatility, I like the price, and I like the fact that he's able to stay healthy more than Jonah Jackson is. Jonah Jackson, I do think he's a better player, right? But I don't think he makes that offensive line that much more better, where I'm going to commit to him for a longer term and a higher price tag. I feel like I can commit to Graham Glasgow for a 2, maybe a 3-year deal, and probably more along the lines of a 2-year deal, and it's going to be a much more affordable contract than what you're going to give Jonah Jackson. So it allows you a little bit more cap flexibility a little bit later on down the road. So that's why I like Graham Glasgow a little bit more.
Okay, makes sense. Now we get to the big dogs. It kind of has the feel that St. Brown and Jared Goff eventually, whether it be this year or in the coming seasons, are going to have an opportunity to make some money. And Jared Goff, look, I don't know if the number is going to be $50 million. I feel like he's going to get an extension. I'm starting to feel like the fair number is going to be between 42 and 47 a season, and you can actually spread it out and make it a little bit friendly for the Lions. I feel like Jared Goff's not going to try and just jam the Lions, knowing that if you just talk to him and say, look, if you just take 42, 45, if you don't go and make it so that you're the top 3 quarterback, if you're still in the top 10 when the salary cap escalates, we can go out and we can get and keep some of the guys that you like, Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell, Hutchinson. And I think when you have a core like that, I think one of the guys that you do maybe overpay for or make them significant is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have no problem giving Amon-Ra $25 million, and I think the number I'm comfortable with probably right now with Goff is at most $45 million per season. How are you spending the money, and do you see a scenario in which Brad Holmes is the ultimate OG? Because you and I would be like, you know what? A lot of people are saying it. You don't have to give Goff an extension. He has a contract. He's got an inked deal. It's over $20 million. It's going to make him very happy. I mean, maybe not in terms of getting a raise, but he's not. I mean, who's going to scoff at making $25 million plus a year? I know he feels like he earned an extension because he got the Lions 2 playoff wins, but if Brad Holmes is the ultimate OG, I don't see him jamming Jared Goff, but I'd do it. I'd be like, look, you got a contract. We're good. Hey, good. You did it once. Do it again. But I do think that Brad Holmes has put the signal out there that we're a draft and develop team and we want to pay our own. And when we say pay our own, that means if a guy takes you to the playoffs and gets not 1 but 2 playoff wins, something this team hasn't seen in ages, okay, I'm down for 40 to 45 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown, you can't. It's hard to argue. The man is just Mr. Reliable, moves the chains, does everything, is available, plays through pain, plays through injuries. He's got the ultimate personality where he's never happy, and I just think that he kind of represents everything the Lions are about. Just a guy that people overlook, and he keeps proving weekly that he's one of the top dogs. But it is kind of weird. Would you pay him in the neighborhood of Tyreek Hill? Because the only weakness that he has is, and I know it sounds weak, but a possession receiver, it's okay that he doesn't like have all these explosive plays because you have a guy that does that. But I still think there's a lot of value in a guy that catches damn near every ball thrown to him and is a yak king. There's a value in that, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown deserves to be one of the highest paid wide receivers.
But let's start with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do you believe that Amon-Ra St. Brown, or would you take Amon-Ra St. Brown over a guy like T. Higgins?
I like sexy. I like big. I like, because I think that the tight end position can be more of the possession guy these days in running backs. So you can make up for it if you don't have the possession receiver. But in my mind, I would be cool with a guy like T. Higgins in this offense, but I like what Amon-Ra St. Brown does as well.
See, I'm a bigger fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown. If we had to build a team, I'm building my team around a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, not a guy like T. Higgins. And look, T. Higgins is up for a contract. Yep. According to Spot Track, he's due to make almost $19 million a year. So I'm willing to pay Amon-Ra St. Brown north of $20 million if that's what it takes to keep him, right? I do feel like 25 mil is the cap, and I don't necessarily want to go there. But if this is what this man is demanding, he is the identity of this football team. He is the guy on that offense that is incredibly reliable. He's always willing to play, never hurt. When you need a big play, he's the guy that you go to. He has some kind of weird mind meld with Jared Goff. Like, he just gets it, right? And like you said, he is never happy. He constantly feels slighted. He's got that Michael Jordan complex. Those guys are hard to find. Those guys are hard to come by because they give you every ounce that they have on every single play. And again, this is the guy who is the identity of this franchise right now. When you say who is the face of this team and everything this team talks about, the grit, the hard work, the dedication, all the big key words, right? All the hot topic words that you see on the billboards when you're driving around Detroit. The ones that say grit, the ones that say hard work, and they got a picture of one of the Lions players on it. Those are all words that you use to describe this man. This is the guy. He is the identity of this team. Never in 1,000,001 years would I ever believe that the identity of a football team would be the slot receiver who was a 4th round pick. But it's this. That's what this team is. It is this guy. You have to pay this man. You have to. And I'm willing to give him $20 million. I'm willing to give him $22 million. I don't want to give him 25, but I'm not going to lose this guy over $3 million a year, if you know what I mean. He is the franchise. He is the face of this team, which then leads me to Jared Goff. I think with Jared Goff, you got to get a deal done. Jared Goff has been able to do something that Matt Stafford was never able to do, that any number of quarterbacks before him was able to do. Jared Goff has the respect of this locker room. Jared Goff has the ability to kick it into overdrive and help this team win, right? And whether you believe it's a little bit more Ben Johnson, whether you believe it's a little bit more guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta or, David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs, whatever it is, the guy who is underneath center, who is audibling out of different plays, getting guys into position and making key throws is Jared Goff. And whether you believe that he's got cement for shoes, I get it. It's a big frustration for me too. I totally understand. But this guy has been able to help elevate this offense, and he's helped elevate guys like an Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's helped elevate a guy like Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta, we talk about Sam Laporta like he's Travis Kelce. This man has been in the league for 17 games, and we talk about him like he is the all-time great that Travis Kelce is going to go down in history as. We talk about him like he is Gronk, who is arguably the best tight end to have ever done it. That's how we talk about him, and it's because he gets elevated by a guy like Jared Goff. Jared Goff's contract, I say sign it now, because what will end up happening is by the time you catch up to that contract, you extend him now, by the time you catch up to that contract is going to be the 10th, 11th, 12th highest contract in the league. I don't believe Jared Goff's going to get $50 million. I think you are 100% spot on when you say it's between $42 and $47 million. And I know people scoff and get upset at that number. But you have to look at what's going on with the league. You have to look at what's going on with that position specifically. And you have to look at the cap percentage. Not so much the cap number, but the cap percentage. Jared Goff signs a $42 to $47 million contract. He is coming in somewhere between 12 to maybe 15, 17% of the cap. That is completely affordable. That is completely doable. I think you go out, you sign that deal now, get this done, extend this man for 3 or 4 years, give him the $42 to $47 million a year. By the time his contract kicks in, he is going to be one of the middle of the pack quarterbacks in the league as far as contract is concerned. And that's okay. It's like what you did with Matt Stafford. Remember when Matt Stafford signed the deal and he was like the highest paid quarterback for all of like 32 minutes?
Yeah, right.
That's basically what you're doing. The thing is, Jared Goff's not going to be the highest paid quarterback, but he's going to get a hefty increase in his salary. He's going to go up to $42 to $47 million. And it just, when you look at the landscape, you've got quarterbacks out there making $55 million a year. I know that Patrick Mahomes just restructured a deal, so it's making a little bit less. I get all that, right? And Jared Goff will end up making a little bit more money than Patrick Mahomes. And yes, we both agree that Patrick Mahomes is probably going to go down in the books as the best to ever do it, right? He's going to be in competition with Tom Brady for the GOAT status. Completely understand. Jared Goff's not on that level. But that's not what you're looking at, and that's not what you're worried about, okay? You've got guys like Joe Burrow out there signing $55 million contracts. They are pushing the line, and it keeps going higher and higher and higher. The next quarterback to sign is going to be closer to $60 million. So if you can get Jared Goff, what I'm going to say is relatively on the cheap for 42, why would you pass that up? Why would you balk at that when this is a guy who completely gets this offense, completely is comfortable with the players around him, makes them better, has a really good offensive line, and his offensive line likes playing for him, right? And he likes his offensive line. These are all things that, when we talk about them, they're really small. But not every team has this. And that's a locker room that believes in this man. That's a locker room that went to war for this guy and helped win a playoff game to help put a smile on that guy's face and get him a game ball. Like, let that sink in. There were dudes out there battling for this one man in a playoff game. Now, yeah, they all wanted to win and they all wanted to go further in the playoffs. But there was a specific emphasis on that game because of who that quarterback is. That's a big deal. You can't buy that. You can't make that up. I think $42 to $47 million is very good for Jared Goff, and I'm willing to sign that deal. I say get it done now. Get it done in the next 2 weeks. That way we don't got to worry about it. And like I said, by the time it kicks in, he's the 10th, 11th, 12th, 15th highest paid quarterback in the league, and it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I'm confident like you are that the Lions are going to allocate their money properly. I think Brad Holmes understands this as well. We haven't seen it yet, but there's going to be a good mix of guys making money and guys that are young and hungry. And I don't think that compensating Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff is going to do a lot to dissuade anybody from playing hard or really destroying the cap, especially knowing that there's going to be opportunities to cut some guys and allocate some funds and the salary cap going up. So guys that play hard deserve money, and we both agree that Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown are guys worthy of big money. Now, Jared Goff, like I said, maybe you go to him and say, look, you do us this solid, we got long-term gains for you in the organization or doing things or whatever it may be. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But right now, things are looking really good with the Lions. The Combine is next week, so we'll have a chance to start to officially talk about what we're looking at next week. And we'll be back, and I'll be back refreshed, ready to look at some players. It'll just be kicking off the drills as the next podcast drops. So we'll have an opportunity to look at players we like. We'll look at further moves and further evaluations. And thank you guys for engaging in the debate about J.J. McCarthy. Go check it out at All Lions and our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. It's fun lighting it up on a Wednesday morning. People are like, oh my God, why are you talking about J.J. McCarthy? Well, he played at Michigan, 1, and 2, I'm telling you, he's a sleeper guy that people are thinking doesn't deserve to be a first-round pick, but has some intangibles that I think a couple teams are going to like. So we'll see how that all plays out. I appreciate my cousin taking the time before his vacation to talk to me while I'm on my vacation. But that's what we love doing, is having a good time talking about sports, even if it's in the midst of time off. We can't not talk about the important things going on in the world of Detroit sports. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. And thank you guys so much for joking around with us and making going on the internet and going on the X platform very fun, especially with your guys' complaints and your suggestions for our content. It's very much respected. We love looking at it. And I can't wait next week because I'm coming back. I'm getting back to Michigan. As much as I love staying in Florida, as much as I would love to live this lifestyle forever, it's expensive as shit to live in Florida. So a week is just enough, and I'm coming back fully recharged, and you will be as well. And we'll get after it on the next episode of Doc and Jock.